All right, so for this Tactics Tuesday, we're going to assume that the worst thing has happened and your battle buddy has gone down. You're slightly far away from them. You didn't necessarily see what happened. They were just alive, and now they're on the floor, state indeterminate. This is the worst medical situation you can be in because you're alone, you have no backup, and you have your other half down. So in that case, your 4 steps are going to be this. Notice how only one of them is even medical. For steps 1, 2, and 4, you don't have to touch the medical system at all, because as a rifleman, your priority is to keep yourself and your team alive. If someone is down, that is a secondary priority, because you can save them if you're up. You can't save them if you just run at them and try and open their medical menu and see what happened. So first step is to call for help. You need to tell your team over your radio that something is happening, because if an entire color team just goes dark on their squad leader or their fire team leader, nobody knows anything that's going on. So first step is going to be some kind of cast call. Second step is going to be return fire. Kill the thing that just killed your buddy. Once they're dead and or handled, then and only then do you do triage. You run up to them, you open their medical menu, and you turn into a medic for 30 seconds. Once that is done, or the medic arrives, or they die on you, all of which are not necessarily good outcomes, but are potentially common ones, you are then to provide security for the rest of your team and just, continue being a rifleman. So, what does a proper cast call actually look like? And this is important because this is gotten wrong a lot, especially when I'm medic. People really like to just get on the radio and say, "Hey, I need a medic." That's not an effective call, largely because to me, half of you sound the same, and the other half of you sound the same to the other half. So I have no idea who's talking to me. So a proper cast call is always the location first. The location can come in a couple different forms. I'll go over that later, but always the location first. As always, when you're doing radio calls, you want to assume that you're about to get shot with every word. If you tell me the location, I will find you as a medic. I may not find you as quickly as if you had given me all the information, but if you can just give me the location, we're already 50% better than every cast call I've ever received. Next, you're going to tell me the casualty type / the urgency. In this case, they're unconscious over there, or they're dead, we don't know, but they're over there. So this would just be, we have someone down. We don't know if they're dead, we don't know if they're unconscious. You want to avoid saying they're unconscious or they're dead, unless you know for sure. Because if you tell me that they're dead, I'm not going to care. I'll handle the people around me. I'll offer blood to passing people. Yeah, I'll sit back and relax. But if they're unconscious, I'll basically teleport to your side if I can. So 2 very different reactions for what looks basically identical from 10 meters away. Then for part 3, you want to give the threat level of the area. If you're in a wide open field, you're being mortared, and there's a fire team on top of you, good luck. I will observe you from over here while you get shot to death, because I'm not going to run into an open field under mortar fire. However, if you're in a safe house and there's security around it, there's a medic much more likely as medics to want to come to you and to want to save you. We'll still try under the mortar fire, but it's going to take longer. We're going to have to organize more people and get more help. So if you can provide a safe environment or inform us of a safe ingress, say maybe there's a ditch 5 meters behind you that I can crawl through to just avoid all of the bad guys, that would be very beneficial. For the location, if you want to be extra special and you want to be my favorite, you can give the location medic relative. So normally, if you give the location like A1 in a red house, I'm going to have to open my map, find myself, go find A1, plot a course, work out what I can walk through and what I can't, and then get to you. If you just tell me, we're 50 meters to your northeast, I can be running before the radio has stopped talking. Or if you tell me, follow the road to your north and take a left. If you had happened to walk away from me before getting shot, you might know that you walked 50 meters down the road and took a left and you're 10 meters farther along. That makes me getting to you so much faster. Not mandatory, because it is a lot of work on your part to pop open the map and do the logic of, okay, if I'm over here, the medic needs to walk this way. And obviously, if you're under fire or actively triaging someone, that might not be feasible. But if you want me to love you forever, you'll give it medic relative. Below, we have 2 sample calls. So that they both indicate 2 important things. So number 1 is the casualty type / urgency. If you include the words but stable and the words spicy in this case, these are real calls, by the way, that I've stolen from VODs. But stable means that I don't have to risk my life getting to you. The line out of bandages means that I do need to risk my life getting to you. And the shit's hot means that it's going to be quite a risk. But because you're out of bandages, I'm going to try and do it. Because you're black on medical, you need a medic there. So mix and match those sentences, and you get either super high level, high risk stuff or super low level, low important stuff. It's important to convey the correct information with each call, because if you say, oh yeah, we're under light fire, but we need you immediately, it's going to be a walk in the cake park. But if I get there and you're facing a tank, we're going to have problems when we all get out of there alive. Obviously, a medic will still come to you, even if you call something like that. It's just going to take longer. You know, we might try and smoke up more or find a better ingress, all of which will take time. And if you need something immediately, trying to make the area as safe as possible, again, the returning fire step, that would be very beneficial, just so we don't have to die trying to save. Now, you've done the cast call. In between these two signs, you've also done the shooting back. The area is as safe as you can get it, or it's safe enough. Now, you run up to someone. You open the medical menu, and you have no idea, are they alive? Are they dead? Are they in cardiac arrest? Are they just having an... Determining death in ACE is one of the simpler things. And by simpler things, I mean it has 3 steps and 3 outcomes, so good luck. All of these words will make more sense once we go over the actual medical menu. But for now, just know that you're going to click on their head, because in real life, what you would do is you'd see like if their pupils dilate, if they have I think it's a vasovagal response, something like that. I'm not a medic. But you go to their head and you look at stuff in their eyes and see how they respond there. So that's what you do in real life. That's what you do in ACE. You go to their head. Then under the examination menu, you check their response. This is literally like you blow in their eyes and see if they flinch or see if their pupils dilate, stuff like that. In ACE, however, you're going to get one of 3 things back. It's either going to be some sentence with the word unresponsive or not responsive. This means they're unconscious but alive. If they say shallow gasps and convulsing, they're in cardiac arrest. If it means motionless and cold, they're dead. And if you ever see someone dead, go ahead and update their triage tag. I'll go over that in just a second. So these are your 3 outcomes. If you walk away with nothing else from this talk thing, Tactics Tuesday, memorize these 3 lines, because a medic needs to know the difference between the 3. If you call someone dead who's actually in cardiac arrest, I will shoot you on sight, because the fact that you miscalled that means the medic didn't get you in time, and it meant that someone who could have gotten up and had a good session died on the spot. Not a big deal if it happens once, but when an entire unit is miscalling people, that can be a problem. So memorize these, remember them. If you hear someone go down near you, run over and check that they've called it correctly, and if they haven't, just take a quick second to educate them, because this is the kind of thing that when you're unconscious, you can hear people. And if you hear someone walk up to your corpse and go, oh yeah, no, Waffle's dead, and then walk away, incredibly disheartening, incredibly annoying. It's one of the worst things to happen in ARMA, in my opinion. So memorize those. Now, the medical menu itself is designed by a drunk monkey or potentially a blind idiot. It has a bunch of important information that you need to be considering at all time, and it's hidden behind insane menus that don't always make sense. So I've tried to highlight the important stuff, starting from the top left. This is possibly the most important part of any medical menu. If you press H, just looking at the sky or looking at the floor, you should see your own name in the top left. That is the name of the patient you are working on. What this means is, if you look at your battle buddy and press H on their body, it will open up their menu. Sometimes this is unintuitive. If you look at the wrong part of someone's foot, if someone goes down around a corner and you can just see their hand, sometimes that doesn't open correctly. It'll open your menu.
True.
If you've also been hit, I did this literally in session last op. If you've also been hit, you'll look in the middle, see, oh, maybe they're bleeding, and you'll just assume that you're looking at the right person. Never assume. I once had someone run up to someone who's unconscious, check their pulse, and say, okay, they have a strong pulse. And I was like, okay, cool. And I just did medical on them normally, assuming they were regular unconscious, hit them with epinephrine. And then 45 seconds later, I put them down and they died. Turns out the person had checked their own pulse, determined that their own pulse was strong, and then told me that the casualty's pulse was strong. The
I
casualty
remember that.
was in cardiac. They were having a cardiac arrest, and I assumed they were fine because I, as a medic, didn't check. Lesson number 2, never assume, check your own stuff. So that's the patient name, incredibly important. This current state is the middle and draws your eye the most. By default, it shows a completely blank person for uninjured, and then the more you get hit, the more red it'll be. I'll go over the specifics of that later. Another important line is that small colored line. It says torso and then lost some blood. The torso means that I've currently selected the torso. The lost some blood means that the entire body has lost some blood. I'll go over blood loss in a second, but that's where you look for it. Then there's just underneath the status menu is the triage tag. It's boxed in purple and then X'd out because nobody in VW that I know uses it. However, if you want to be extra super special, when you run up to a corpse and you've adequately determined that they have died, you can open up their medical menu, click the triage tag, and then you should get 5 outcomes. None, minimal, that's green, delayed, that's yellow, immediate, that's red, and deceased, that's black. If you set their triage tag to deceased, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't kill them. It doesn't reduce their heart rate. It is literally as if you had written on their forehead with Sharpie, dead. What this means is anyone who then opens the medical menu, like if you all open mine, you'll see that I have been marked as deceased. I've never used it. I'm going to try and start. It is worth noting that if someone misidentifies someone as deceased, there's no way to cross-check that. So I'm a little nervous about saying always trust the triage tag, but if you have the time to mark someone as deceased, that might be helpful. In the bottom left is the activity log. It gives you a name and then an action. In this case, I bandaged myself 4 times. This is stuff for tourniquets, given blood, given drugs, and in my opinion, for a rifleman and for most medics, it is useless. There's a more accurate version of it under the context menu in the top left. Context menu is a whole other, it has a slide to itself because it's real bad. The past examinations menu is where you're going to find the result of that death determination step over there. When you check the person's head, the result is going to be here. And this one is super useful. Always look at that one. Make sure that the correct thing is being checked. Don't read blood pressure as normal when you were meant to check heart rate. Be sure you click the right button. Now, the status menu is probably the most important part, because when you run up to someone that's wounded, you're going to see something like that. You can see their left arm and their head is unwounded. Their chest and their left leg is wounded mediumly bad, and their right leg and their right arm is lightly wounded. Basically, the more redder a limb is, the more deader it is. In ACE, your head, your chest, both arms, and both legs can be independently damaged. If any of those limbs, specifically the limbs, so the arms and the legs, if they have a red bone through them, it means that they have been broken. Normally, white is unwounded, whereas shades of blue show bruising. Bruises don't matter about anything. They can just be useful for, sometimes if you get shot and you're in a little bit of pain, but there's no bleeding, it represents your plates catching it. And in real life, when you get shot through your plates, you get a bruise, and ACE simulates that. For actual medical, it doesn't matter, and it just colors your body different shades of blue depending on how bruised you are. Look in the overview tab, specifically the overview tab, so that the top right, just under blood volume, or just above blood volume, you look there to see if they're bleeding. If any part of their body is bleeding, it will show in red text, bleeding. That is not limb specific, and that is not an obvious thing. If you click left, you can see here, I've clicked on their left arm, and it says bleeding, even though their left arm is not bleeding. I didn't know that until I was making this, and Juju said, hey, put that on the list. I did not know that as a medic. I thought this was limb specific. So if you ever need to see some part of their body is bleeding, and to me, these colors look really similar, specifically the left and right arm. I've recolored my menu, see me after class. Just look here, and if it's bleeding, it'll be in big red text. Now, once you know it's bleeding, you probably want to do something about it. So this is where you have to grapple with the context menu. I've used 2 colors and a bunch of arrows because it's a context menu and it changes depending on what you click. So from the left, first thing is a triage card. It tells you the amount, the action, and the time since given. So here you can see I put a tourniquet on this person 2 minutes ago. Sorry, not even I. It just says someone applied 1 tourniquet 2 minutes ago. Someone applied a morphine injector 1 minute ago. 1 saline a minute ago, and an adenosine 0 minutes ago. This is only useful for tourniquets. I've highlighted the morphine auto-injector because if, just a note, if you receive more than 1 morphine in 30 minutes, you have overdosed on morphine and there's a high chance of you falling unconscious. So if you ever notice on your own triage card or your battle buddies that there is 2 morphines given within 30 minutes, monitor them or have them call a medic just to make sure everything is okay. Triage card does not change. It is not context sensitive, even though it's under the examine and treatment context menu. Next is a little, not hourglass. What's it called? The Sherlock Holmes thing? Magnifying glass. Yes, that's the one. A magnifying glass with a person in it. That is the examine menu. If you're clicked on someone's limb, you can check their pulse or their blood pressure. If you're clicked on their head, you can check their response. You can also check their pulse on their chest. You cannot check blood pressure on their chest. However, you never have to check blood pressure, so don't worry about that. Next button, it looks like a bandage, and then a slash, and then a broken bone. It's the bandages and fractures menu. Here is where you're going to be spending most of your time. When you run up to someone and they're bleeding, you click on the limb you want to bandage, and then you can apply packing bandages, elastic bandages, or if it's an arm or a leg, you can apply a tourniquet. You cannot tourniquet the chest, and you cannot tourniquet the head. The little pill bottle menu is for medics only. That's where you get your drugs. You don't have to worry about it. And then this button, it looks like a heart rate monitor in a hospital. This is only available for you guys if you click the person's chest. You will then do CPR. That's also where the blood menu lives for medics, but you don't have to worry about that either. The grayed out button is the drag/carry button. I, for the longest time, didn't know what it was an image of, and this is just a picture of what it's supposed to look like. It's someone carrying someone on their back. I think it looks like someone with spaghetti on their forehead, but, you know, what can you do with silhouettes? Finally, the last button is self/patient toggle. What this does is if you're looking at someone, if you have someone's medical menu open and you want to look at yourself, you click that button. Now you're looking at yourself. If you click it again, you're looking at them again. Be aware that this doesn't always work. Sometimes it doesn't see the person in front of you as a person, and it will just open your menu and then open your menu again. So if you want a bulletproof way to make sure you're accessing the right menu, you can ace interact with the person's chest, go to their medical menu, and I just learned something new. Everyone come over and interact with, no, Perez, set it back. Interact with Perez's hips. Notice how the interaction button is red? He has marked himself for immediate care.
Ooh.
Let me try something here.
I was wondering if they showed up somewhere. That's
they
cool.
do. Okay, Juju is marked for delayed and his is yellow.
Wow,
I did not know that.
Yeah.
It also shows
Interesting.
up on the left thing.
What about if their set is dead? Does it show as black? It does. That's cool.
Interesting.
Oh, it does show up on the left side.
Yeah,
too.
I know nothing about the ACE interaction medical system. I only ever interact on their hips and get to their medical menu because it ensures that you're getting their menu and not your own. If you self-interact, you can open up your own menu. But I did not know that about the color. Okay, so maybe the triage tags do have something.
It's more useful than we thought, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really see use for it, but there we go. So that is the context menu. Now we can talk about actual legit triage. We've beaten the menu system, and we can talk about stuffing bandages into corpses. So triage is a 4.5 step process. First thing you want to do, use your tourniquet. Judging when to use and when not to use your tourniquet is a thing that it takes a while for medics to learn, but for riflemen, you carry 6 bandages. Use your tourniquet on the worst limb, please. It will save you so much time, and it will also save you from having to resupply from corpses as much. So first thing you do, slap a tourniquet on the reddest limb. Tourniquets have a 5-minute limit before they start causing pain. I believe it's 5. It might be up to 10 with our medical settings. But point being, put a tourniquet on. You don't have to worry about it for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, it's not going to cause damage. It will just cause slight pain, so slight flashing on the person's screen. If you ever notice that you're suddenly in pain, even though you haven't been shot for the last 10 minutes, pop open your menu, see if you left a tourniquet on your arm somewhere. If you tourniquet your leg, you can't walk, so that's pretty noticeable, but leaving tourniquets on arms is pretty common. After you've tourniqueted, you're going to dump your bandages into the person. Then you're going to check their heart rate on their chest. You always check the person's pulse on the person's chest, because if you tourniquet a limb and then check the pulse on the limb, you will get 0, because tourniquets block all blood flow, all liquids. So no saline in, no blood out, no morphine in, nothing. Checking your pulse requires blood going in and out, so if you check it on a tourniqueted limb, you get nothing. Always check it on their, I think you can get it on their head too, but the chest is a bigger target, so I just click their chest. Then you may have to do CPR. If you do, you go back to the advanced treatments menu and you do CPR. I will go over the state of when to do CPR in a bit. Fourth, move your patient. This is depending on the situation around you, and it involves getting your head out of the medical menu for a second and determining, are you in danger? If you're in danger, drag or carry the person back. If you're not, I wouldn't worry about it. Especially if you think you might be better off shooting the threat than you would dragging the person, just drag the person. Just shoot the threat. Dragging and moving is highly optional, and in most cases, the person prone on the floor is much safer than the person standing up, dragging someone back. So unless you have good cover or a very compelling, like a mortar, if you're getting mortared, yeah, pick up the person and run. Otherwise, it's your own judgment. If you think you would be safer prone on the floor, then just leave them prone. It doesn't matter over much. I've never seen anyone die because of a failure to move. Now, for actual bleeding, again, the more redder a limb is, the more deader it is. So just find the reddest limb, slap a tourniquet on it, then move on. Every rifleman has 1 splint, 1 tourniquet, and 6 bandages. What this means is, if you run up to your battle buddy, you should have 2 tourniquets at your disposal. I recommend using at least 1. You can use both if they're very bad off, and this is something you'll learn with time. What's a 2 tourniquet situation? What's a 1 tourniquet situation? What's a 0 tourniquet, they're just wounded, and what's a you need a medic next to you situation. You learn it with time, but for the start, I recommend always dumping 1 tourniquet onto them, if not both. Medical in and of itself takes time. Like each medical action takes between 4 and 8 seconds, and those 4 and 8 seconds can be pretty important when you or your buddy are getting shot. So if you have a buddy, use them. If you don't have one, when you run up to a casualty, make one. Make a friend, say, hey, Bacon, someone's down, come with me quickly, let's go check on them. That way, at least one person can be shooting, and if both of you need to be hands-on the patient, you can be. Now, like I said, best case, you have 1 tourniquet and 6 bandages, they have 1 tourniquet and 6 bandages, so 12 total, 2 tourniquets. This is going to run out super fast. Most of you guys have had to resupply off me or a different medic in session. So when you find medical, on corpses, on friendlies, loot it. 6 bandages is maybe 1 or 2 engagements worth of light wounding. If you come up to anyone who's even like a little wounded extra than you get in a normal firefight, you're going to run out of medical. So after you're done with the patient, check your inventory, see if you need to go medical hunting. If you can find it off corpses, please take it off corpses. Otherwise, resupply from your medic. You should always have your 4 elastics and 2 packing and at least 1 tourniquet. I like to carry extra tourniquets because they're super useful. Now, the point of stopping bleeding is to maintain as much blood volume as possible. So at what point is lost too much blood? At what point is too much too much? Well, there are 4 options for blood volume. You can either have lost some, a lot of, a large amount of, or a fatal amount of. These are translated into infantry terms down here. If it's yellow, they're fine. They'll be fine as long as you do medical on them. If it's manageable, you can't wait on the medical. You should drop to your knees and quickly bandage them, but they'll be fine as long as you continue to work. If they're on lost a large amount of, you should have at least 1 buddy hands-on, maybe 2 buddies hands-on. This is stuff like far off impact by a mortar or turned a corner into an LMG. They're savable, but you need more than one person doing medical because you can only do one medical action at a time. Lost a fatal amount of is functionally dead. They're not dead. There's a high chance that they are alive. The only way to know that is by doing the death determination steps earlier. So unless you have a fire team next to you or a medic on you when you go to check them, they're basically dead. Don't leave them. Do your best to help. Use your tourniquets. Call for a medic. Once you check this menu, update your medic. If they're not already next to you, give them a call and say, "Hey, they're manageable but bleeding fast," or "No, they're basically fine. Slow your roll. I got this." If you get this call, medic, I need you now. Get here yesterday, kind of thing, because they can be saved. It's gonna suck real bad, but you can do it as long as you have a lot of hands or a lot of luck or both. When you're actually applying bandages, there is a rhyme and reason to why we carry two types of bandages. We carry 4 elastics because they work on anything moderately well. There's a chart somewhere online determining each of the 5 bandage types and each of the 37 billion wound types and their sizes. Each bandage has something they're amazing at and something they're terrible at. Elastic bandages are moderately good to amazingly good at everything except for velocity wounds, puncture wounds, and avulsions. Velocity wounds is like getting shot, a hole in and out. Puncture wounds is like if a frag goes off and a big chunk goes into you, you've been punctured. The difference between that and velocity is, I think, like the raggedness of the wound or something like that. And then avulsion is a large chunk of skin torn away. So if you're familiar with degloving, that is an avulsion. Or, like skin torn away from your body elsewhere, not necessarily epiderm. Anyway, doesn't matter. If you see the top 3, put a packing bandage in it. If you see anything else, put an elastic bandage in it. Be aware that you only have 2 packing bandages. So if you see a limb that has 15 avulsions, tourniquet it, because you do not have the bandages to solve that problem. There's also wound size, so small, medium, and large. It's basically just a determination of how many bandages it's going to take, and it doesn't determine type of bandage. So the bigger the wound, the more bandages it's going to take. There's a math to it. I don't know it. It's not important. Bandage until they stop bleeding. If you need more bandages, get them from a buddy or your medic. This is why tourniquets are important, because you have a limited number and wounds can get really big really fast, especially with grenades and stuff like 40 mag mics. It can get real rough. So use your tourniquets before using your bandages. Once they have stopped bleeding, you need to think about their heart rate and their heart in general. Only measure after bandages are expended. Heart rate is determined on the amount of blood in the body. As a rifleman, the only thing you can do for someone is doing CPR. This will keep them alive, no matter what. As long as you're doing CPR, they will live, as long as they're not bleeding. They can still die from blood loss. As such, the medical guide differs from me. They say check heart rate first. I disagree. I say bandage everything, stop as much bleeding as possible, and then consider their heart rate. Because they will definitely die if they run out of blood, but they'll only maybe die if their heart stops. You learn, with time, you'll determine when, how long it's been matters, and you'll get a sense for that over time, but that's not something I can really teach you unless you pull out a stopwatch when they fall over. So only measure their heart rate once you've run out of bandages. Then always measure the heart rate on their chest. If you've tourniqueted a limb, that limb will go dead. Nothing in, nothing out, heart rate included. None for heart rate does not mean dead. Again, dead is all the way back there in determining death. If you forget, or if you're in doubt, do CPR. Just do it. It can't kill them. As long as they don't have a pulse, it can't kill them. And even if they do have a pulse, I've never heard of someone doing CPR so hard that the person's heart exploded. I've not tested it because it's literally never come up, but I wouldn't worry about it. Do know that while you're doing CPR, pulse will show as weak. If you're a medic and someone is doing CPR, it will show that they have a pulse of 30 beats per minute exactly. This means that while someone is doing CPR, you can't check their pulse to see if their heart has started. You have to wait for the person's animation and loading bar to finish, then check their pulse, then do CPR again. If you're alone, like in our worst case scenario, alternate between doing CPR and taking their pulse. You can also do 2 and then 1 if you know or if you have a pretty good hunch that they're not going to wake up. But if you're not sure, do every other. Then when their pulse comes back as strong, stop CPR. Or when the medic comes by, listen to their orders. They might say, run and shoot the bad guys, I'll handle it. A lot of the times, though, when I'm a medic, I will have the rifleman do CPR so that I can get blood into their system. So don't be surprised if the medic sits down next to you and says, keep doing CPR. Expect that. Now, the last thing, cardiac arrest. This is defined as having no pulse while still being alive. It's caused by low blood volume, which you may notice is not something that you can fix. It's something you can temporarily solve, but you can't fix it. Heart will not start until the person has lost a lot of blood or less. So until they've lost a lot or lost some, the heart will not do its own work. If you get to someone in this case where they're alive, but they've lost a lot of blood and they have no pulse, tell your medic, hey, we have someone in cardiac, and then do CPR until they arrive. The only thing you can do for them is do compressions on their chest until the medic gets blood into them. You can't start the heart for them, and there's nothing you can do but sit there and do CPR. It's boring, and I understand that, but literally while you're keeping them alive, you are their heart for them. If you have to stop CPR, let the animation finish, because the game logic only updates at the end of the animation, so don't cancel it halfway through. Let it finish, and then do something else. Looting, medical, shooting someone, moving the person, whatever. And then as soon as possible, get back on CPR and doing chest compressions. If you have to leave them alone for some time, try and get someone else to come and do chest compressions. If you can't, mark their position on the map, please. Even if you have a casualty that you have to leave, mark their position on the map with and then tell the medic that that's their position. Just so that we can find them after. And also, if you're a color team, like in a TVT where we have to spread out across an entire kilometer AO, if you're a color team away from your marker, mark yourself on the map when you call for medic, just so that I know roughly where to find you, especially if landmarks aren't useful. So that is the infantryman's guide to medical, mostly. There are probably details that I have forgotten that I will spam in the Arma channel when I remember them. But for the moment, this is it. Any questions?
So if you find a body and you don't know how long it's been, do you still recommend bandaging first because of the timer stuff, or?
Do the first step triage, which is determining if they're dead first.
Okay. Always
determine if they're dead first, because you don't want to waste medical on a corpse. I don't use heart rate as an indicator for aliveness or deadness. There's the problem of if they fall over, enter cardiac, and you get to them 2 minutes later, the timer is 3 minutes. So in the time it takes you to bandage, they might die. But generally, if they're your buddy, it shouldn't take you 2 minutes. And if you do get to someone a little bit later, you can skip to checking their heart rate first. But if someone's in cardiac, you need 2 people, maybe 3, because 1 person needs to be doing compressions, 2 people need to be bandaging, because if they're in cardiac and it's been 2 minutes, they're going to bleed out, or their timer's going to run out before you alone can do everything.
Gotcha.
So it's not always a linear timeline. I just presented it this way because 99% of times, this is what you're going to run into. The heart rate and cardiac arrest slides can be moved to directly after determining death, because if it comes back gasping and sputtering, then you know they're in cardiac and you need to alternate between CPR and bandaging. But someone being in cardiac immediately elevates it to a untrained help kind of situation.